Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I am your podcast host, Catryn Becker. In this podcast, we talk to all sorts of different people from business owners, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, you name it, we have talked to them. And it's in an effort to see what brings us all closer together instead of what drives us apart. There's a lesson learning in each and every single episode, and I'm glad that you are here to learn it. In today's episode, we are talking to Anthony Diaz, who is a family law attorney and mediator out of the great state of Florida in Orlando. And he is known as the peacemaker. He really works to make a great resolution for divorces. And he's done it for over 20 years and over 1,000 cases. So we are so great to see what sort of learning we can all take from that, as divorce is something that has touched pretty much everyone's life. So Anthony, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak to the audience. We're so glad to have you here.
It's great to be here, Catryn. Looking forward to having a great conversation.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned in the intro, you are the peacemaker. Please tell us a bit more about what got you into being a, family divorce attorney and getting that nickname.
Sure. So I'm going to make a long story short. When I was growing up, I was always the one solving problems. I don't know why. I kind of grew up quick. Grew up in a one-parent home. My mother raised me, so I kind of had to make decisions quickly. And people used to come to me for problem solving. So that was kind of an intro on really wanting to help people. I started out as a CPA, helping people, and then decided to go to law school. And in getting involved in family law, I saw that as an opportunity to resolve conflict with folks and realize that there was a different way to do divorce. I went through a divorce of my own as an attorney, and it really opened my eyes on what other people must be going through, because it was a horrendous experience for me. And I'm an attorney and I know the law. And I thought to myself, what must that look like for other people who have no idea what the law is and really don't know what their options are? So from that point and other factors drove me into out-of-court divorce solutions and looking for ways to help people resolve divorce peacefully, amicably, and to help reorganize their family. So it's great to be able to do that. There was a journey behind it, but I'm really happy to be able to help people go through what's not an easy process, but it doesn't have to be hard.
And that makes a lot of sense. And one thing that I want to make sure that I clarify in my mind as we go through this is, you have your legal law degree as an attorney, registered in the state of Florida, but you're also a mediator that can work anywhere. Can you please go a little bit into detail about what's the difference between being an attorney and being a mediator, and, what's the benefit you see in being both?
Sure. And there is an important distinction. So as a mediator, I am a neutral professional that's been trained on how to resolve conflict. I can resolve it in family law or other areas of law, but I prefer to specialize in family law because that's my background as an attorney. And so I can't represent either of the spouses. I'm neutral, and my role is help them to explore options, to know what their goals are after divorce, so I can help them resolve the issues that need to be addressed in the divorce. So being neutral allows me not to take sides and not to really prefer one party over another. But it's also important for the spouses to know that, because I can't give my opinion if this is a good outcome, if this is fair. I have to stay neutral, and I have to make sure that I just help them to offer options and help them to make sure that they cover all the issues. Being an attorney really helps being a mediator because I understand what the law is, and I'm able to communicate with each of the spouses on what they may be entitled to if they went to court. Now, you don't know what the judge or the court would do, but I can give them some parameters and some guardrails of where the court might go. So having that legal background, and I have my own caseloads, so I think folks that know that I handle cases outside of mediation also gives my mediation a little bit more credibility for that. So, but it's wearing a different hat. When I'm an attorney, I represent one client. I can't represent both spouses. And as a mediator, I represent neither of the spouses. So making sure that my clients know when I'm in each of those roles and what that entails is really important. But being a mediator helps me as an attorney because I'm also, when I go into mediations with my clients, I know how the flow should be, and it helps me to help them to negotiate and to compromise on things that maybe aren't that important, and that helps me keep my peacemaking hat on. So being a mediator and an attorney really helps when I'm in the other role as
Sure.
well.
Sure. So if you're not, when you're in the mediator role, if you're not representing either side, how do you get paid?
Well, we do that up front. We say, okay, is this going to be shared equally? Is it part of of the spouse's own agreement together on how the mediation is going to be paid? But we usually have that decided in advance, so there isn't any awkwardness or uncomfortability. But certainly, many of the cases is it split equally. Now, I have a number of cases where the financial resources are different between each spouse. One spouse might just have more resources. Many times that spouse might pay most or all the mediation, but it's a discussion that I make sure it gets handled before the mediation. So, because it really shouldn't enter into the mediation at all. We want to focus on the assets that are part of the settlement agreement, and want to make sure the mediation fees are not really a distraction for that.
And that makes a lot of sense. So I know you can't probably go and divulge too many details, but you've done over 1,000 cases, right? I mean, that's a long, 20-year history. Are there any cases that stand out to you where, coming into it, you thought there's no way there's going to be a peaceful resolution, but were pleasantly surprised at the end? Is there anything you can share with us?
So, without going into too much detail, I had a mediation that two other attorneys were involved with their clients. It was a very high conflict, and in fact, either one, I can't remember, or both spouses didn't want to be in the same mediation room together. And this is pre-COVID, when we were all meeting together.
Yeah.
So we actually started out in separate rooms. And that's not my preference. I understand the uncomfortability, but there's something about connection and being in the same room that sometimes kind of helps things, as opposed to being in a different room, and it makes it a little bit more sterile. So we really weren't getting anywhere. And I made a suggestion to both attorneys, because it's their case. I said, I would encourage both of your clients to spend some time together in one room, and we'll let them be and let them have a discussion and see if they can make some headway. And both attorneys kind of looked at each other and then looked at me like, are you crazy? And I said, what do we have to lose? We're not getting anywhere here unless you have a fear of any physical altercation. And they didn't. I said, let's give it a shot. If it takes 5 minutes and they leave, okay, that's a 5 minute investment, but maybe it might work. So we tried it, and they were in there for an hour, and each of us are looking at and saying, well, should we interrupt? Is everything okay? We didn't really know. So I said, let me do this. I'll go ahead and knock on the door. So I went ahead and knock on the door.
Oh, so it
And
was just the two of them by themselves in the
just the
room.
two of them.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you. Okay.
So they said to come in and open the door, and they were hugging each other. And
Oh.
these were people who didn't want to be with each other, and I can understand that with the emotions, but they were allowed to make whatever peace that needed to be made, and that wouldn't have been done by keeping them separate. They didn't have a choice but to confront what needed to be confronted. So, and that's happened a number of times when I tap into my intuition, and I'm like, you know what, this might work, and it's kind of out of the box. And I think, as a mediator and as an attorney, I think it's important. I think we owe it to either our clients or the clients that are in the mediation to really try anything, and to not be bound by maybe tried and true ways of doing things. And in that situation, it worked out.
Oh, I love that so much. I also love how you talked about the intuition piece of it, because I feel like, we all have intuition. It's just whether or not we listen to it. And it's a skill. It's something, a muscle that we can grow and learn. So has that been a major piece of your success, do you think? And where along the line did you like realize you had it, and how to tap into it to get these, positive results?
Yeah. So I've done a lot of inner work with myself, just getting to know myself better. We all have challenges and paths that come up in our life, and that was the path I went down to do some healing, and really it helped me to connect with, like you said, the intuition or our inner voice. And then the next thing is to trust it. So one is to realize you have it. And then when you realize you have it, if you don't listen to it, it really doesn't do any good. So I was able to develop it and began to trust it. And it's helped me, I mean, not only personally, but professionally, to trust my gut. And doesn't always work, doesn't always have the outcome, but I always trust it, because I know even if I don't get the outcome I'm looking for, there was a reason that I didn't get the outcome I was looking for, and maybe there's another lesson for me to learn. So, I hope to impart that on my clients, to, especially because when you're in an emotional situation, it's hard to trust anything.
Yeah.
You're really all over the place. And what I hope to be is kind of a steadying presence to kind of help steady the ship, and be able to them to get in touch with what is their inner voice saying in terms of making a decision. And there are decisions, big decisions, that have to be made in a divorce. It's one of the biggest uh, moments of anybody's life that affects every part of your existence. And being able to trust your decision is very difficult at that point. So I help, or try to give my experience, and create some space for them to be able to make their own decisions.
Well, and I mean, I can only imagine the emotions involved. And you have probably seen yelling and tears and snot and everything in between, run the gamut of it. So, you know, I'm just thinking, as a person, like how is it to be around all those very intense emotions, and how are you able to kind of set that aside at the end of the day and not take it home with you?
Sure. Well, one, it's not easy, because I'm very passionate about what I do, and I'm very invested into helping my clients and the people I work with get from a really difficult situation and get them to move on with their life, knowing that there is um, light at the end of the tunnel. So I do a lot of my own self-care. I've got a morning routine that really gets me grounded and helps me to get ready for the day. And then at the end of the day, I have a kind of a like a shutdown routine, and in terms of shutting things off work-wise, then I can shift into my personal life, and not allow what might have happened during the day to affect that. It's not always easy. I don't always get it the way I want, but I think it's important when you work with um, in in your work life that's stressful, and you work with people that are in difficult situations and are in distress, to be able to manage that in a way, because they're expecting you to be at the top of your game, or in a great position. And if I don't take care of myself, I can't possibly be able to guide them through a very difficult situation. So that's really important to me. I meditate. I do yoga. I'm doing a yoga challenge now. That's yoga every day for 40 days. Um,
Wow.
so it's very exciting, but it's really made a difference to start the day that way. I can see the shift of really being focused, and it kind of helps, just kind of letting go of things that aren't going to help you during the day. And then at the end of the day, start to let go of things that might have accumulated. So I can enjoy, my life, and then be able to do the same thing again the next day.
And I think it's great advice for anybody. I mean, no matter what it is that you're doing, we're all dealing with people, and people can bring baggage. Someone has a fight with somebody, and, something doesn't go right. Like, it's really easy to bring it. So I really I love hearing that. Um, I do a lot of work with my clients around communication. I find language fascinating, and how people can hear the exact same sentence and interpret it in different ways. Is that something that you see a lot of with once they've made the decision to divorce? Like, have you had any situations where you can clearly see where the miscommunication was, and thought, maybe if somebody had gotten involved sooner, the divorce could have been avoided?
Yeah, definitely communication um, is one of the most common reasons why people divorce. It's usually not the only reason. There's a lot of underlying things, and in fact, I do workshops that teach people how to communicate, whether in a work setting, a personal setting, and because just put yourself in a situation, and I've been in, I'm sure you've been in it, and you have a conversation, and 10 minutes into the conversation, you have no idea how it got to where it went. Have no idea. And a lot of it is maybe you're thinking of your answer and you're not listening to the other person. Well, that part you missed changed the whole comment that they make. So I think we aren't born with perfect communication skills, and I think that's why they call it a skill. It is a skill. It's not something that just comes to everybody naturally. And um, my hope is for people that are struggling now and maybe listening to this, there's hope. It's not too late. Look at working with someone, and look at communication styles, because it's not only what the communication in general. We all have our own style, and sometimes people that are married have styles that maybe don't mesh, and if that's not negotiated, and if that's not discussed and worked out, it's only going to get more intense, and many times it gets to the point of no return, and then people have gone through so much pain and hurt because of miscommunication. It's really hard to undo that. But if you can realize that early in the relationship before you get married, or even when you're married, the sooner that you realize that something is miscommunicating, to address it. And I've worked with couples as a coach, as a relationship coach, where to see that switch go off, and they didn't even realize that they weren't understanding each other, and they weren't taking responsibility for not understanding. And I think that's important, that it takes two.
Absolutely.
And I'm in that situation all the time, and I'm like, wow, how did I miss that? I went off in this direction, and that's not where that conversation was going, and that's on me. So really understanding that and being open to making some changes. This sooner a couple can do that, the easier it'll be to really make some changes, and they can stay together and not have to be divorced.
So my husband and I are Catholic, and when we were engaged and, dealing with the church to get married, they actually gave us a test. So we had like our two
Yeah.
little scantrons, and we went into different rooms and took our test, and then they brought us together and kind of went through anything where we were in like not had the same answer, so that we could discuss it with the mediator, with the other person there who'd run the test. I thought that was such a great way to make sure that you're on the same page, because it was things that, when you're in your 20s and you're in love, you don't really think about, how are we exactly going to raise the kids, and, how do we feel about this topic and that topic. So it was a great start to a marriage to have that piece. And I would encourage other people to go through it. It's been great for us.
No, it's a great tool to have. And I would suggest even people that have gone through that, when we get older, and we're all getting older, we change in certain ways, and sometimes our communication styles change. So maybe they were compatible when we were younger, but as we get older and do certain things, sometimes our
I like to say we
communication
get more
styles
experienced.
acts. I like that. I'm going with that. But to really be aware that that as you change, to be able to change together. And sometimes even if your communication style change, that doesn't mean, okay, well, now it's over, but to recognize, hey, we communicated great in the 20s, well, now we're in our 30s and 40s, how come we're having these issues? It's not the end of the world, but it's a good awareness that, okay, if that changes, to address that sooner than later would be something I would encourage couples to be aware of.
And that's such a great tie-in for, my next question. I do talk to business owners, and we talk about personal stuff, we talk about spiritual stuff, we talk about all sorts of stuff, because even though we're in business, we're still humans, and having this experience. But it's so easy to make the connection that how people end a romantic relationship could also be how they end, a business relationship, and the conflict that can come there, because it can be just as difficult to unravel when you think about all the money that's tied up into it and how to split things out. So is there any advice that you could give listeners on maybe better ways to ensure that they're setting up their companies correctly, or if there does need to be a parting of the ways, how you can take some of those mediation skills and apply it to different types of relationships and to different partnerships?
Sure. So I'm going to use some examples in the family law world that are definitely parallel to business. So there's what's called prenuptial agreements for folks that are about to get married. And basically what that is an agreement. If in the event we divorce, this is how, our assets and debts are going to be handled. Any assets or debts we acquire after marriage, we're going to handle it this way, so we don't have to worry about or try to figure that out during the divorce when emotions are high. Well, the same thing with businesses. When businesses form, and whether and it's mostly it could be for any form of business, you can have an agreement beforehand. Hey, in the event that there's a dissolution, or for whatever reason, one or both of us, or if there's more than two, are not interested in this structure, let's come up with how that is going to get unwound. So that's one way to do it. Now, there are businesses where spouses are married and own a business. So, you have the spouses going through a divorce. Now what happens with the business? So that
Right.
prenuptial agreement can address the business. Let's know before we get married how we want to handle this business as business owners. And as consulting business owners, there's a lot of options you have in terms of what to do with the business. Keep it together, sell it. One person handles it, the other person is a consultant. Maybe one person's an employee, one person's an owner. Whatever that might be, having those discussions before you get married, if you're owning a business together, is really important, because it takes the emotions out of it. And you can always change that agreement as you go along. Like maybe what you decided 5 years ago isn't working now. The marriage is still going good. Let's make sure that agreement is the best way to handle our divorce, if there is a divorce, because it really serves them, it serves their family. They might have employees. There are other things that come into the mix that are relying on this couple that are going through a divorce. So having that in place is important. But even if the owners aren't married, be able to have an exit strategy for one or both of them in advance, I think is important, because you can look at what's the tax ramification, what's the cash flow ramification, is it going to affect debtors or vendors or things like that. It's really hard to do when you're in a dissolution phase, either of the marriage or of the business. Anything you can decide beforehand and tweak as you go along. If and when it does happen, it's really going to make that be less stressful, and it'll the decision that you made a few years ago in anticipation was probably a better decision than if you had to make that decision now without having anything in writing. You might be angry, the anger might take over. So having something in place before the hits the fan is really it's just good business sense.
And it makes a lot of sense. And Anthony, you shared so much great stuff with everyone. So just kind of to summarize, contracts, having those in place, really important. Communication. And I think I really loved what you talked about in readjusting the communication and reevaluating it, making sure that you adjust as you evolve, because that's going to also always be changing. And then being able to have some sort of intentional routine that you do to start your day and to leave work at home. I think those are 3 really great tips for people to take away from this. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we say our goodbyes?
Sure. So one thing I really want to share for people that are either going through a divorce or contemplating it or having difficulties in their marriage, which is not uncommon, to have hope. It does get better. It's never as, sometimes the saying is, it may never be as good as it is, but it's probably not as bad as you think it is. So just have faith, know that things always work out, and find yourself a professional that really aligns with who you are and what your goals are, because that's going to help you through, however that marriage or divorce goes and what direction it goes with. Having somebody on your side is really important.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, for all of the listeners, if you are in the state of Florida and are looking for legal representation, please reach out to Anthony Diaz for a consultation. And if you are anywhere else and are looking for mediation services, he is able to serve you in that capacity as well. So, Anthony, thank you so much for your time and sharing what you have learned through your amazing career and helping us all to, I don't know, I almost feel like be a little kinder to one another.
We can all use a little bit more of that. I appreciate it. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. To the listeners, thank you so much for being here. We are able to bring you amazing guests like Anthony through your support. So please continue to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with your audience. Until next time, everyone, thanks so much for being here.